We went for two reasons. One, to bring Osama bin Laden to the gates of hell. Literacy test and the Ku Klux Klan campaigns of violence and terror.
Our Secretary of State, Katie Hobbs, made a statement a few weeks ago that she would not allow these machines to be used again because she could not verify that we had not, you, not us, you had tampered with them. Election goes on to make sure that those machines haven't been tampered with, that they are calibrated correctly, and I believe they do that also after an election. So I have this question I don't understand. How can the Secretary of State say that she can't certify the machines weren't tampered with when supposedly we have certified people that come in to certify machines aren't tampered with? It doesn't make sense. Could you explain that to me, please?
Madam President, I certainly understand your confusion, and I share that with you.
All told, more than 150 Americans of every age, of every race, of every background exercise their right to vote.
So was there a discrepancy between the numbers that the county said they had and the numbers that were counted by the cyber ninjas? Was there a discrepancy?
They haven't released a number yet, if you will. However, we do know that those numbers do not match with Maricopa County at this point.
With recount after recount after recount, court case after court case, the 2020 election was the most scrutinized election ever in American history.
So the audit war room sent out a tweet last night saying that if a forensic audit was done at the bank and the bank blocked access to the bank, withheld or deleted information from the bank, or said they didn't possess the passwords to the computers, they would all go to jail.
In America, if you lose, you accept the results. You follow the Constitution. You try again. You don't call facts fake and then try to bring down the American experiment just because you're unhappy.
Walk people through, when you say security breach on November 3rd, what are we exactly talking about?
Well, so the Maricopa County Recorder, Stephen Richer, he literally sent out a letter that said, I am writing to inform you of a recent security incident involving your voter record. This past November, an unauthorized individual gathered voter information from our website. And it's like, okay, if an unauthorized individual is able to do that, then what's your concern with giving up the routers to the secure Arizona Senate and vetted cyber ninjas?
Are you on the side of truth or lies, fact or fiction, justice or injustice, democracy or autocracy? That's what it's coming down to.
Democracy held in 2020, Eamon, but the fear among President Biden and many Democrats here is that it may not in 2022 and 2024 unless major federal voting rights legislation is enacted.
There was a security breach of the voter registration servers in Arizona on November 3rd. Secretary of State has known about this. They have hidden it. They have not revealed it to the American people. Maricopa County has also known about it.
You're saying Katie Hobbs is on as a contributor at MSNBC and CNN. You're saying she actually knew this breach happened and never came forward and told anybody?
That's absolutely correct. We know this because we now have learned that voters in Arizona actually received some notification individually that some of their data had been breached, but they've hidden it from the rest of us.
So the thing is that if you look at the history of the welfare that we distribute around the world, you really see a history of both sending it to corrupt nations, but that's the history of it throughout Africa, throughout all of these nations, of people skimming off the top. But it's insulting to Americans. We're running a $3 trillion debt, and it does have ramifications. You know, what we're seeing is inflation throughout the economy right now. It's an insidious tax. It hurts the poor the worst. It's a regressive tax, and we're going to see more of it. But it comes from people who don't seem to have an opinion about debt, who just seem to just go along their way and say, oh, I'm going to help people. I call it the big heart, small brain syndrome. Give everybody money. Give everybody free money. give the world free money because we have a big heart and we want to help people, but we don't see really the ramifications of what the debt's doing to our country, what it'll ultimately do.
New York Governor Andrew Cuomo is due to be questioned tomorrow as part of the investigation of sexual harassment allegations. A source familiar with the state attorney general's probe tells CBS News this doesn't necessarily mean the inquiry is wrapping up. Several women, including former aides, accuse the three-term Democrat of harassment or inappropriate conduct. The governor denies all wrongdoing. He said he would cooperate with the investigation, but rejected calls to resign, including some coming from his own party.
The World Health Organization is essentially now asking for a do-over on its initial report about the origins of the coronavirus. Officials are now conceding that some of the information concerning China might not have been accurate.
All eyes today were back on the Wuhan Institute of Virology after the head of the World Health Organization made a stunning admission.
There was a premature push to, especially reduce one of the options, like the lab theory. And I have worked in the lab, and lab accidents happen. It's common.
Brianna, perhaps we should point out that the federal government has had to spend trillions of dollars to try to keep Americans alive during this pandemic. So it is absolutely the government's business. It is taxpayers' business if we have to continue to spend money to try to keep people from contracting COVID and helping reopen the economy. And so it is our business to try to make sure Americans can prosper, Americans can freely associate, and knocking on a door has never been against the law. You don't have to answer, but we hope you do, because if you haven't been vaccinated, we can help dispel some of those rumors that you've heard and hopefully get you vaccinated.
More needs to be done, like Dr. Lena Wen, who in an op-ed for the Washington Post said, quote, "That's not nearly enough. Biden needs to get behind proof of vaccination, starting with his own White House events. A gathering touting the United States' progress toward independence from the virus should have been the ideal opportunity to make the case for vaccine requirements. It matters for everyone, including the vaccinated." Why not at least model how you let people into an event?
Well, Brianna, you read off some of the comments of some representatives in Congress, and that particular type of thinking is not. It's out there, and we want to give people a sense that they have the freedom to choose.
A third day of protests in Miami.
It's a change coming, and it's time for a change.
Some demonstrators blocking traffic. Many Cuban Americans worried about family back home.
This is now a life or death situation.
Where Cubans on the island are grappling with dire food shortages, rising COVID cases, and a communist dictatorship that's cutting off the internet while protesters cry out for help.
They are starving. Literally, there are food shortages, there are medical shortages, and the Cuban people need help.
What's it going to take? If it doesn't happen now, when is it going to happen?
Meaning homeland and life, a spin on the communist-era slogan Patria o Muerte, meaning homeland or death.
But even though the president said he was going to reverse the policy, you can't say when he plans to reverse the policy?
Again, these protests happened yesterday, I think, or over the last 2 days.
He made the promise in September.
You're talking today about how some of these protests are inspired by people exhausted with the government. Why is it that yesterday the State Department was saying that this was all happening out of concern about rising COVID cases?
Well, I would say first that the protests were just happening yesterday. We're still assessing what is motivating and, of course, and driving all of the individuals who came to the streets.
So when these protesters are yelling freedom and enough, there are people within the administration who think they're saying freedom from rising COVID cases.
Recently, the New York Times described the American flag as alienating the sun, but we've seen these Cuban protesters flying the American flag as a symbol for freedom. We saw it in Hong Kong as well. So does the administration support international protesters flying the American flag, and what message do you have to Americans who are wary of flying it here in the U.S.?
Well, I would say first, the president certainly values and respects the symbol of the American flag. He's someone who certainly waves it outside of his house, or does in Delaware and other places where he's lived throughout his time. But he also believes that people have the right to peaceful protest.
So far, the Biden administration is not intervening, but issued a statement in support of the Cuban people. This as Cuba's president blames protests on the U.S. government and its embargo.
They need the freedom. They deserve it. It's been long enough. It's enough. It's enough already.
So right off the bat, BLM is curving this to blame on the U.S. And that's not what the Cuban people have been chanting. That is not what they have been shouting for. They've been shouting for liberty, for freedom. They've been coming against the communist government of Cuba. They're living in luxury. The tourists, they get the best of the land. But the people in Cuba themselves, the Cubans, the people of color, they're suffering. And you're ignoring that suffering because you don't even conceive and the people behind BLM, the BLMers, BLM, idolize communism so much more than the actual lives affected, the actual black and brown lives affected in Cuba. And if that isn't clear for people, it needs to get clear now. Black Lives Matter was never about Black Lives Mattering. It's always been about a cultural revolution. It's always been about bringing in Marxism and communism through the use of black people dying. And if that doesn't sound cruel, disgusting, and evil to people right now, it's time to wake up and really understand.
Now that you've had a few days to think about it, does this White House still think the protests in Cuba are happening because people are upset about a rise in COVID cases there, or is there some thought maybe given to the possibility that they are protesting because they are sick of communism?
Well, Peter, first I would say communism is a failed ideology, and we certainly believe that. It has failed the people of Cuba. They deserve freedom. They deserve a government that supports them, whether that is making sure they have health and medical supplies, access to vaccines, or whether they have economic opportunity and prosperity.
And there are protesters now in this country who are chanting as these protests in Cuba are going on, where is Biden? So where is he? What is he doing to protect these people who are rising up against the leaders of this failed experiment?
Well, first, he is certainly advocating for and speaking out as we've put out a statement, multiple statements.
Why is the Secretary of State Blinken trying to address human rights in the U.S. by inviting experts, UN experts from Cuba and China here?
Well, first I would say that the Secretary put out an extensive statement on why he is why he believes that we need to play a role in lifting up and pushing countries to do better on human rights, on ending systemic racism in their countries.
You just rattled off all these problems with Cuba. They've got dissenters disappearing down there. In China, they've got 1 million religious minorities in internment camps. Why are they going to come here and tell us how to improve our country?
I certainly don't think that's the format of the event, but lifting up and elevating human rights.
The media really wish that the whole debate over critical race theory would just go away.
State after state, Fox News and Republicans, conservatives have whipped up a moral panic about so-called critical race theory.
This is just the latest outrage device over at Fox, is it not?
In a bad faith effort by Republicans to make critical race theory a wedge issue.
By the way, critical race theory is enormously useful. It's a graduate level construct. It's not taught in K through 12.
And again, it is not being taught in grade schools.
No one is teaching critical race theory K through 12.
Just to be clear, can you just repeat it? It is a law school test. What is critical race theory?
What is critical race theory? I suspect it's not as major an issue as we've made it out to be in the media.
What even is critical race theory? Nobody knows. It's too high level. What is anything? Seriously, it's like they're scared to admit it even exists.
Critical race theory comes out of critical legal studies. A lot of people don't realize critical race theory is critical theory applied to race and the law. Derek Bell is a law professor at Harvard, so CRT is critical theory, right? So Marx's conflict theory, Gramsci, the Frankfurt School, critical theory, okay? Critical legal studies is the leftist Marxist way that they're dealing with that in the law. Critical race theory is the way you apply that to race and the law.
And did I hear Chris Hayes say so-called critical race theory? Chris, the right didn't come up with that name. The academics you're defending did.
You see what they're doing here, right? They're basically defining critical race theory as this extremely niche, high-level academic theory so they can claim that kids aren't learning it in school. But they can define it however they want, but to the average person, critical race theory is a catch-all term for all the familiar 1619 Project type ideas. White privilege, institutional and structural racism, the idea that America is inherently racist, you get the idea.
Why do you think, if you can step outside of it just for a moment and look at what Nicole wrote in terms of what she created in terms of 1619 Project, look at the things that you've written, the things Adam Serwa has written. They've been searing, but they're just facts, right? They're not dangerous in and of themselves. They're just ideas. Why do you think that people on the right are so terrified of these facts?
But they are dangerous. They are. They're extremely dangerous. The political order in this country is predicated on a bedtime story. The history is not merely something that lives outside of the politics.
Well, guess what's going to happen? Howard University is about to turn out students, thousands and thousands of minds into the world of journalism over the next many, many years when the two of you are associated with that university, who are going to tear down the house. And there's nothing anybody can do about it.
It was very inspiring to see Ahanu do something that they were not sure they were going to be able to do. I just felt really thankful for Ahanu for creating our family.
Oh, I put it over here.
The baby has been able to latch, but I've not been able to produce any milk. It's okay.
MSNBC, the TV network, not the Schedule III pharmaceutical, has a birthday today. That channel is 25 years old. From its first hours, MSNBC was a purely corporate project. The MS stands for Microsoft, the NBC for what was then a division of General Electric. So the channel began as a merger of business titans, and fundamentally it's still just one big HR department. Like puppies, all TV networks are cute when they're little. The problem is you never know what they're going to grow up to become. But we're going to rise above it tonight and wish the woman you just saw, the race lady, along with Jeb Bush's former flack, the Rachel Maddow impersonator, and most sincerely Rachel Maddow herself, a very happy birthday. And we're going to do it with maximum cultural imperialism. As the Irish say on occasions like this, may your life be full of gladness and health, and your pocket full of gold as the least of your wealth. May the dreams you hold dear be the ones that come true. May all the kindness you spread keep coming back to you. Happy birthday, MSNBC.